Everyone, it's good to see you. I am Brad with Unwired View. We are going to be doing another unboxing of an EVO product today. Not evil product, EVO. Now you're thinking, wait, EVO? I've heard that word before. Yes, because there was an EVO 4G. This one has a lot more words. This is the HTC EVO Shift 4G from Sprint. Quite the mouthful, a lot more words in it. But when you have extra words, does that mean that the phone is more awesome? Is there some sort of word to awesomeness ratio that we need to know about? Let's find out. This is the unboxing of the HTC EVO Shift 4G with Sprint. Time to see the box. Okay, we got Experience 4G here. This is indeed the HTC EVO Shift 4G. HTC, I should say. So, just looking at this, we can tell everything that's in there. We've got the phone, battery, charger, micro SD memory card, and the manuals, blah blah blah. Okay, we got lots of words on the box, nice codes. Okay, yeah, that's exciting stuff, right? Looking in, here's the phone itself. Get that out of there. Alright, so just to wrap up the box, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this. Guides, we got a whole bunch of guides in there, recycling instructions, etc., etc. Good times, right? I know. Then we have the wall charger with the USB port, I assume. You like that? That was awesome. Stuff like that happens sometimes in an unboxing. Okay. Alright. Exciting stuff. There we have the USB port, and then we have the rest of the cable to go into that USB port. Good times? That's what I thought. Let's move on. Now that we got the box out of the way, here is the actual phone itself. You know, the interesting stuff. Because, frankly, who goes into the box and starts playing around with the user manuals first, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. So, looking at this thing, it's pretty different from the original EVO. We'll get into the comparisons in just a moment. But looking at the design of this, actually I really like the design on the back here, because there's a little bit of a curve or a concave method to the design on the back here. So that way, the true back is not really as wide or as bulky as you would think it would be. Now you also have, of course, the full QWERTY keyboard, and we don't really know exactly how that's going to turn out in terms of how easy it's going to be to type. So we'll get to that, of course, as well. So looking at this thing, we've got the 4 touch-sensitive buttons, and it seems like nowadays most of these companies are not really doing physical buttons. They're just going with a full, pure touchscreen. Chances are that saves costs, and frankly, the design on it is pretty cool too. So, feeling this in my hand, because of the concave back, is actually really not as bulky as you might think it is. Really, it's 15.5 millimeters, so it's certainly not the thinnest QWERTY keyboard phone on the planet. Not by a long ways. But that still doesn't mean that it's a huge box that you have to hold in your hand. So that's one thing to consider. So let's turn this thing on. So we got the power button. We have liftoff. Okay, so just really quickly going through the EVO Shift 4G compared to the EVO. Now, it's natural to think of this as the sequel, like it's the number 2, and oh, it's supposed to be as awesome. And frankly, talking to the guys at Sprint, that really wasn't the intent at all. The intent on this was to have an EVO that complemented the original EVO 4G. So that way you have one of the high-end models with the 4.3-inch screen, and then you have one that's still a great phone, not necessarily as high-end, so it's one of the more mid-range phones offered on Sprint's network, but still has the 4G. It's a 3.6-inch screen. So let's drag this down and get this turned on here. This one has a 5 megapixel camera versus the 8 megapixel on the original EVO. It does weigh a little bit less, amazingly enough. And of course, having that full keyboard on there does make it thicker than the original EVO. So that's another comparison as well to make. But other than that, there's really not, well, in general, there's really not any similarities between the two phones at all, besides the fact that it just runs Android. So going in here, I'm going to go in. Okay, software information. Alright, so in here we are running Android 2.2. So this one's going to be capable of doing Flash. Also going through the EVO Shift 4G comparison, one other big one is just the fact that it has an 800 megahertz processor in it versus the 1 gigahertz processor in the EVO. In the long scheme of things, 200 megahertz difference probably not going to be that huge, especially when you're looking at 800 versus 1000. Yeah, not a whole lot. And frankly, when I'm moving back and forth through all the screens, I can't see any delays at all. Usually with an 800 megahertz processor, you'll see some delays or just a little bit of sluggishness. So far, I'm not seeing that at all. A lot of that could be contributed, or attributed, I should say, using the right language, to the HTC Sense user interface. So it's not running the vanilla Android on there, and HTC never does. HTC has their own special Sense user interface, and frankly, it's one of my favorites. They've done a very good job of integrating their user interface into the Android experience to make it a very easily integrated device. And so, just looking around this thing here, we've got FriendStream, which is for social networking, where you can have your Twitter and your Facebook updates just being loaded into that widget. Looking at this, we have the obligatory Sprint bloatware, as I like to call it. We got the Sprint TV, the Telenav, the Sprint Zone, football, NASCAR, all that fun stuff. So I'm just looking for anything else to note on here. I'm not really seeing a whole lot that you wouldn't normally see on any other Sprint phone. You also have access to the Sprint hotspot. And then looking through everything else, I'm not seeing anything else that really stands out to me at this point. So we'll go from there. Last thing I want to go over in this little preview of the Shift 4G. Granted, we're going to have a full review here coming up pretty soon, and we'll go a lot more into depth on the ins and outs of the phone itself. But in terms of my first impression with the EVO 4G, sorry, the Shift 4G keyboard, looking at this thing, they're pretty decent sized keys. So they're all separated out, slightly raised, but not so much that it becomes a burden. So typing on this thing actually feels pretty good. It's got a little bit of a spring to its step. And then of course you have the direction pad here. Looking at any other things on the keyboard, the numeric, or the number row is all integrated into the top letter row. Frankly, whenever possible, I like seeing the numbers all by itself. I just find it a little bit easier with as many times as I type numbers in. It's just nice not having to worry about it. In this case, they're trying to save space, so I see in terms of design where they had to keep it all compact, as compact as possible. You've also got a .com button here, which is always nice to see. Beyond that, I'm not really seeing a whole lot in terms of extra cool little keys that were thrown in. So that's kind of a bummer, but again, not the end of the world. As long as the keyboard itself is actually easy to type on and it's got a great feel to it, I don't really mind so much about all the extra little frilly stuff that they throw in. So all in all, this is the EVO Shift 4G. So if you're looking for the EVO, then this really isn't going to be the phone for you, because it doesn't have the best specs out there right now. And especially compared to some of the phones that were just announced at CES, again, not the best. but looking at this thing, this is still fresh, it's still good, and I'm actually very excited to play around with it for a while. All in all, it's a very solid phone. Looking at this thing, it really doesn't feel like that much would happen to it if you were to drop it on the ground. On the back here, it's got, instead of having the typical plasticky feel, you know, some phones like to just have the whole glossy look to it, makes it look all sleek. HTC doesn't necessarily care that much about that kind of stuff. This one, it's more of a soft rubbery kind of feel to it. Sure, there might be a little bit of plastic, but at least it still feels like it's going to be easily gripped in your hand, and it's not going to really have any issues if you're to drop it a couple times. And granted, that's going to happen every once in a while. So take it for what it's worth. You know, certainly stuff can happen to the phone, but it just feels like it can handle a lot of stuff. So looking at all the extra little things here while I talk. So very grippy in the hand with that 3.6-inch screen. It's still large enough to get everything taken care of without having to worry about squinting my eyes or, oh, if I pinch to zoom, am I going to go completely off the screen? Well, you don't really have to worry about this kind of stuff. And yet, at the same time, it's not so large that you don't feel like you're holding a huge rock up to your head, which I know some people have that as their big complaint about the regular original EVO. So, nothing to fear there on this one. This is going to be a great mid-range Android handset to be considering. I can't wait to get into their full review for it. But for right now, go into the preview at unwiredview.com and get more information. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.